Greetings, I'm Stephen Quiller, and I'd like to welcome you, my fellow painters, to my studio. And I want to show you around just a little bit before we get started in talking about this wonderful show and the award winners for the show. I start my day first in this small little meditation room, and I center myself, and then I move to my study where I can work on my emails, or if I'm working on a book or have any business things to work out. This is where I do all my writing, and I've written 7 books at this point. This is where I have my computer. I answer my emails and start my day, and once I get all the business stuff out of the way, I'll move down into my studio. This is where I love to spend my day, and as you can see, it's a studio that I've longed for all my life, and so for the last 20 years I've been able to paint here. And we've got the Rio Grande River right out my door, and a nice little deck. In the summer I can go out there and paint if I want to, but in the winter I just work in water media. This is a piece that is done on aqua board and is an acrylic, but you know, I work in watercolor, gouache, casein, and acrylic in a water media approach. So I have all of this all set up, and I've got all the paper I want. I've actually got an area I'll show you where I do my photography. So I designed this table that can be flipped up or down, and actually I can use this to cut paper and various things with, but then I can flip this up, and it's set up for photography. So I can shoot all my paintings that I then put on the internet, and I use for archiving and also for articles that I do and books and so on. I have a framer, but I can pick out frames, molding that I want for my paintings, and then I just figure this all out, and I let my framer know what I need and what the size of the image is and the mats and so on, and then she'll put those all together for me. So that's pretty cool. So I like to work large, and this I stretch watercolor paper, usually 140 pound, on stretcher bars, and I can work really large, and that is really exciting to work with. But I've got a lot of storage area for different paints and so on, and cabinets that I have set up where I keep all my studies and drawings and so on all the way through, and I can refer to when I'm working. Like here's a little drawing I did a while back of some red-winged blackbirds, but they're just being filled, so I need to have another file cabinet. So let's take a look, and I'll show you the view I have from my studio. Well, as you can see, this is the view from my studio, and it has true north light. I live in the high mountains of Colorado, and this time of year it's actually mid-April, and so we still have not a lot of runoff. The water's a little low, but it changes. The seasons just keep moving, and this is a great place to paint in the middle of the summer. And then of course I like to go in the high country and just paint on location. Well, I'd like to welcome everybody to my studio, and it was certainly a pleasure to see the paintings that were selected for this show. As I think all of you know, you have 2 different jurors in this process, and that's a little different than many of the shows that I jury all the way through. John Salmon, and a good friend of mine, actually juried all the entries. So when I received the ones that were selected, I didn't see the rest of the show, but all I can say is the ones that I did see were magnificent paintings. A lot of variety, some transparent and acrylic media, all kinds of exploring abstract to representational, very tight, beautiful, sensitive watercolors to loose expressionistic pieces. So I want to congratulate everybody that entered the show and the ones that were selected, and especially the award winners. I think it's a real good lineup. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, the first award I want to talk about is the Harrison and Bonnie Van Dyke Award for Transparent Watercolor. And it goes to a painting called How Now, Brown Cow. And when I look at this painting, I love the painterly quality. There's a very juicy textural quality to the paint. It's basically done in a lot of earth tones, but in the yellow-orange range, and in the background it's a blue-violet. So you're working with two complementary colors. But there's a granulation and it feels like a cow. This soft, wet movement in the nostrils, in the eye, and the way a little bit of the paint's been lifted and massaged, just had to give that an award. It's a beautiful piece. It's a small piece, 11 by 15, and sometimes paintings need to be small, and sometimes they need to be large. This one is perfect at this size. So the next award is from Helen Farr Sloan and the ladies at the Pyle studio. And this is pretty interesting, just the award itself, because Helen Farr Sloan was married to John Sloan, as probably most of you know back there, but John Sloan was one of my mentors, and I learned a lot from him in the use of color that I've carried on for my life's work. And the Pyle studio, with N.C. Wyeth and all of the great illustrators that worked there, this is a very meaningful and historic award. So congratulations. The painting goes to a title, Waiting, and it's just a painting of a crow in a branch of a tree. But it's very dynamic. The composition is almost oriental in the soft diagonal movements, very abstract. And I love that. I love the soft, wet quality and the very high analogous wet paint color and neutrals that set off the strong contrast of the crow or the bird. You can see a very limited palette, and I would call this a yellow to violet palette. The violet is almost black, but strong contrast, beautiful design, a nice, almost half-sheet watercolor. Congratulations. Okay, the next award goes to the Thornton Oakley Memorial Award, and it goes to the painting Deliverance 2. This particular painting, interestingly enough, after having a couple small paintings, is quite large, 40 inches by 30 inches. This painting needs to be large. I like the color, the neutrals. You can see the bridge, and the artist obviously had painted this vertical, as setting up on an easel. And you can see, if you look close, you can see the drips and everything moving down the painting. It's a very expressive piece. Here you've got the neutrals that set off to pure hue. And of course that's what color does. So when you get to the flag that is actually placed right in the center, and in this kind of patriotic dynamic piece, it is pure hue with the strong red, white, and blue, with a hint of warm in the background. So that gives you a little bit of color to set that off. Anyway, beautiful vertical piece, nice expressive painting, transparent watercolor. The next piece goes to the Jenny Combs Award for Excellence, and it goes to Dawning Serenity. A beautiful vertical painting. It's all transparent watercolor. It looks like there's a little graphite work in there too, but I respond to this by the beautiful painterly quality that does have a feeling of dawn and serenity. I look at the water, and that very loose application and movement of the water, and then the reflection that's just a little tighter, pulls you right into the main subject of the boats in the painting. If you look at the reflections from the posts that expand and protrude through the composition at the upper area, they create bands that link and interlock your horizontal bands and tie the composition together. So that's an important device. There's basically a rectangular geometric motif that carries through the piece. But to me, the most important thing is that beautiful mood and sensitivity that expresses what the artist was after. Okay, the next award is presented by the American Picture Frame Company, and it goes to the painting titled Vine on Gate. This is basically a full sheet watercolor. And what I respond to are many things, actually. Compositionally, you notice that most of the painting, the intricate developed part, is to the left with a void on the right. Sometimes a void can be a weight, and that's interesting, I think. The next thing I respond to is the lost and found, or the loose to tight. And you can see the artist has come in fairly loose, lifted paint while it was wet, charged in a bit of color, and then has these tight leaf forms to suggest what the painting's all about. The other thing I really respond to, a lot of people have trouble with greens. And look at this painting closely. You'll see beautiful use of a variety of greens, from yellow greens to neutral, yellow-orange yellow greens to cool blue greens and so on. And if you notice, there's a hint of warm in the deep shadows of rose and cad reds that are the complement that are going to enhance the green colors. So it's a beautiful piece. I respond to that title, Vine on Gate. That's a good one. It's a lot like my titles, View from the Air, number 3. Anyway, the title is secondary. The painting's beautiful. The next award goes to, or is given by, the Swain Memorial Award for Representational Watercolor. And it's given to a painting titled Exotic 2. This, I think, is a very dynamic design. That's what drew me to it. Originally, in all good paintings, must have a good abstract design. Whether it's a very, very tight representational piece or a very loose piece, makes no difference. That's what's going to draw the viewer to the painting. Here, the very loose application, saving the whites in a very beautiful, broken down composition, is what it's all about. The neutrals, if you look, are some cool and some warm. Very energetic, spontaneous marks in the painting are the way the paint application needed to be for this design. If you come in with a number 1 round brush and start getting real tight, you're going to lose it. But this very splashy mark energy that goes through there just gives that feeling, a consistency of the way the paint is put down. Very limited palette, hints of warm, but mainly in the neutrals, strong contrast, so it's more of a value structure in painting. Congratulations. The next award is presented by the Newman and Saunders Gallery Award, and it goes to the painting Stone and Steel, Manayunk. And it's a half-sheet watercolor vertical piece, transparent, but I thought it really had integrity. This painting had integrity. The vertical placement and the vertical patterns that run through the composition in a little bit of a diagonal that moves from left to right. The telephone pole, lots of people would not put a telephone pole in the painting, but Edward Hopper did. Why not? It really defines the lower edge of the composition. And look at the beautiful use of rectangular geometric motif that carries through the painting. Limited palette, warm through most of the painting, and then you've got the stronger cool in the dominant darks. It feels like this area of the country. It just has an integrity that I had to respond to. So congratulations. The next award is presented by the Philadelphia Watercolor Society Award for Composition. And it goes to a painting titled Hopi Territory. And I live out in the western part of the United States, get down to Arizona, New Mexico a lot, and responded to this painting. I think the composition is very interesting. One thing that I talk about is division of space. And if you look at this piece and look at the sky to the mountains, to the division of the mountains, to that central little orange layer, to the lower areas, there's a beautiful division and rhythm that carries through the composition. But also, it is a collage piece, so it looks like there was rice paper laminated onto a watercolor board, something like that. The texture becomes an important part of the piece. It's predominantly warm again, but there's that central area of a hint of cool that moves through there that sets off those warm tones and gives you that energy and feel of the landscape in the area between western New Mexico and eastern Arizona. Beautiful texture that captures the mood. And as you come forward, the hint of water and the stronger rocks kind of pulls you into the foreground and pushes you to the background. Congratulations. The next award is presented by the Milford Sands Cots Award for Transparent Watercolor. And it goes to a painting called Magnolia in Bloom. And what a beautiful piece this is. This is all transparent. It has a feeling, I'm not sure if it was, but it has a feeling like it was done right on site. It has an energy that you really can't capture in the studio. So I love the marks. I love the transparency. I like the warm and cool. I like the use of white in the paper. You notice that the artist has come in with these neutrals, kind of cool neutrals that are a little stronger dark, where he or she wants to set off the white paper. So you have a little more emphasis in those areas, so it gives you a nice in and out beat as you move through the composition. Very beautiful piece. The next award is given by the Constance J. McClatchy Memorial Award for Excellence in Pastel. And it goes to a painting called Field of Milkweed. And I think it's really neat that this show, I've had one other occasion to help with the awards, is that you have pastels and drawings also in the exhibit. And so it gives me pause and gives me a chance to see some other applications and expressions. But I really responded to this piece. We have milkweed out here, and it's probably throughout the country, but the way this is handled, that background is so loose and neutral, but yet there's movement, a hint of warm and cool. And then that stronger contrast, and again, if you look at the diagonal movement and beat of the three near vertical diagonals in the composition, it gives you a real good breakup of negative and positive space and placement of the areas of emphasis. So when you get to those milkweeds, you can just feel the explosion of the seeds kind of breaking out. You get a little stronger color in the warms and the neutral cools, a little violet against those yellows. It's a beautiful piece, and congratulations. Now, the next award is given by the Mary K. McGee Memorial Award for Excellence in Pastel. Just like the last piece that was awarded for pastel, this again is another beautiful pastel, but look how different it is than the last piece. This piece is done much rougher and more expression in a lot of ways. More texture in the paper. It looks like maybe the paper was a black paper to start with that you built from. You know, the piece is 12 by 18 inches. I love the use of yellow and violet. You know, I think it's just spectacular. Wonderful dynamic composition and a variety. When you look at the violets and the red violets, the artist hasn't just taken one pastel and used it all the way through, but has a very analogous weaving of a little warmer to cooler pastels, and the same with the warms. So nice, soft diagonal composition and a very expressive piece. Congratulations. The next award is presented by the W. Emerson Heightland Memorial Award for the painting called Dog Walkers. And when I see this painting, I can't help but smile. Obviously, there's exaggeration in rhythm and movement, the way the artist has carried out the figures, and a consistency of the rhythm and curvilinear motif. But there's also a beautiful, if you look at the positive figures against the background, the way they have been linked together and moved through is very, very beautiful. The one thing I also notice in the center of the background is just the trees and reflections and the vertical movement that carries you through. But notice that there's a stronger contrast in the center, dark to light in that vertical rhythm. And as it moves away, it becomes just a little softer and diffused. So that kind of pulls you into the composition. Nice texture. You can see a nice little dolly or some kind of placement of a mat to give it a little texture in the bottom. And it's a nice use of color. Very transparent and repetition of color throughout the painting. Beautiful piece. This award is the Vincent Award, and it goes to Stockyard Cowboy. And this is a beautiful piece as well. Long, elongated vertical. I like the placement of the portrait. Many people painting a portrait wouldn't consider the edges, but the negative space and the way the hat kind of breaks up and goes through the edge of the composition really gives it a strong design. Even the beard going down to the bottom moves out of the composition. And that helps the viewer to participate rather than having a vignette that everything is said within the composition. The piece is done in transparent watercolor, predominantly to the warm side, analogous yellows to reds, and certainly more in the neutral range. If you look at the face, on the left side you can feel that light moving in, much stronger light, and then the shadow side where they're cooler, warm colors. Hints of the blue violets to red violets in the beard and some of the shadow under the hat. But overall, beautiful use of color, nice sense of design, and a very expressive portrait. This is the Philadelphia Watercolor Society Award for use of color, and it goes to a painting called Blue and Gold. Anyway, it is a beautiful, beautiful, sensitive piece, and these paintings where it is so super realistic, just I marvel at the way the paint is put on and the sensitivity of the eye the artist has to be able to deal with the light and shadow of the cloth, the beautiful texture and the warm to cool of the lemon. But not only that in transparent watercolor, but this is a beautiful abstract design. There's a nice curvilinear rhythm and beat that moves through the piece. And in the darker cools, you've got everything from a red-violet neutral to the blues and blue-violets. So congratulations on this piece. I think it's exceptional. Good job. This is the Federoth Award, and it goes to the painting Hopscotch. Now this, as opposed to transparent watercolor, is an acrylic piece built in layers in a very abstract, beautiful approach. There's collage. It looks like different materials that have been laminated and developed into the piece. I love acrylic, and I love that layering, and you get a look that you can't get any other way, something that they call pentimento. But if you look at this, it's most completely done in neutrals and in value, but there's a nice little linear drawing element that kind of runs through it too to give it that mark. And there's little notes of red-orange that are just placed in almost in a triangle that moves through, and so it's just enough to give it a little lilt and a little sparkle and to give it an energy that you wouldn't have otherwise. Congratulations. This is the Don Patterson Award, and it's given to the painting titled Waiting to Return. You know, as you can see so far, there's a variety of paintings, you know, all kinds of landscapes and abstracts and very tight realistic pieces. And here we have the human figure. If you remember an earlier piece, I was talking about that white area being a void. Here the placement of the figure is moving to the right, looking out a window. And if that figure would have been placed further back, it wouldn't have the same impact. So the artist has placed that figure closer to the window, obviously waiting for a return, and has that stronger dark void on the left, which gives a counterweight to pull the painting together. Stronger contrast where the light and the face meet. Beautiful, sensitive use of the paint and the sensitivity to the figure. So I like the light and shadow and just the dynamic composition. Congratulations. This award is given by the Baltimore Watercolor Society Award for Excellence, and it's for this beautiful transparent watercolor titled Morning Chat. I think this is a beautiful use of watercolor. The white of the paper is so important to it. If you look at the way that white kind of laces and moves through the composition, it ties that painting together, and it's set off by those strong, warm and cool colors and the stronger contrast. The application of paint is consistent all the way through. Beautiful marks. The negative shapes in the sky with those little white elements of the wire or whatever is fantastic. The use of the blue has a nice granulating quality, so it just has a very expressive piece. This piece needed to be done very quickly and to get that spontaneous use of mark. And so it's there is a little bit of gouache, it looks like, that are painted into the shadows. The figures are handled in much the same way as the rest of the painting. Nice abstract design, great marks, beautiful dynamic composition. Congratulations. Okay, the Pennsylvania Watercolor Society gives this award for excellence in watercolor to a painting titled Jars on Quilts. And look at how marvelous this painting is. The sensitivity of the eye, I mentioned this once before, is so spectacular. When you look at the jars and you can just feel the texture and almost hold that jar. And as it comes down here into that little blue-green hint on the edge, that's just what a jar would be. I love the composition. I like that black, that strong negative black that is the quiet negative space that sets off the translucency of the jars and then the strong color of the quilt. So it's a beautiful piece, nice choice, working rectangular, and beautiful use of light and shadow. Congratulations. Okay, the next painting is awarded the Marie L. Hollenbeck Award for excellence, and it's for the painting titled Earth Elements. This piece is a more experimental piece, you know, especially compared to the last piece. It was such a beautiful use of watercolor. Here the artist is using acrylic and collage and tearing different shapes and laminating and scraping and getting various organic textures going on in the painting. But I think it really captures a feeling of these mesas and this deep horizon and this use of the sky, gradation, color temperature change, and captures a feeling of the earth and the elements. So there's many different ways to paint, and that's what I like about this piece, is it's taking it a different direction and using it in a way that you couldn't if you were doing a straight watercolor. So congratulations, and keep pushing it. This award is the Philadelphia Watercolor Society Discretionary Award, and it's given to the painting McDonald Avenue Trestle. And this is a large vertical piece again, 40 inches by 26, and a beautiful vertical movement. I like the abstraction in the composition. If you squint your eye, you can see a beautiful abstract design that runs through the piece. The upper area is a little less developed, and the diagonal that carries you down into the composition just thrusts you down into this lower section where you see the automobiles, this car signs, and so on. And that car on the far right, you can just feel the movement in that car. So the way the paint has been applied, I'd like to see the original here, but it looks like a finger's been used to kind of move across the upper part of the paint and just put it in a very expressive way that gives you that dynamic expression for this particular subject. Limited use of color, you know, a couple little street signs and little red notes on the cars. Other than that, it's mainly value, but a beautiful piece. This is the Frank Nolford Memorial Award for transparent watercolor, and it goes to a painting titled The Honeydew List. I love this piece. There's a sense of humor about it. It tells a story. I've been there many times. However, it's certainly more than that, you know, the connection. It's a beautiful, sensitive use of paint. And this is a pattern piece that I see, you know, and if you look at the pattern moving through the composition from the market cart, moving up to the pattern on the quilt of the coat, to the background area, those horizontal beats, to the bananas, to the upper windows. It's just a series of patterns that run through in a various variety of smaller and larger diagonal, horizontal patterns that move through the painting. The treatment of the figure, I think, is excellent. It's all transparent watercolor. The face is done in kind of a looser, moving way that connects with the rest of the painting. If you'd gone very tight and painted it very realistic, it would not work. So this is a wonderful piece. It tells a great story, and congratulations. Okay, the Philadelphia Watercolor Society 120th Annual Exhibition Award goes to the painting Carmack Street. The more I looked at this painting, the more I had to move it up in the awards. It's a very sensitive, fairly tight painting, but it really, you can almost smell the street corner in the painting, and I love the use of light and shadow. If you look on the building on the right, the way those cast shadows move up into the light, it's very, very beautiful. Nice composition, the figures in the lower right, beautiful placement, and yet there's the street with this void of this truck that sits there, and another figure just kind of dotted to the left. It reminds me a little bit of a Bonnard, where sometimes he'll put his figures way off in the corner where you almost have to discover them. But it's a piece you could live with for a long time, continue to discover new things. Good job. Beautiful use of transparent watercolor and a nice sensitive piece. This is the Philadelphia Watercolor Society's Membership Award, and it goes to the painting titled Putting on the Ritz. And again, here we go with another beautiful, beautiful, sensitive painting. It's just so fantastic. Here, where a couple of the others were much more ornate, I like the simplicity of this particular painting. First of all, if you look at the flower and study it closely, you can see warms and cools, kind of yellows and violets that are into the whites. It reminds me, if you ever studied Joaquin Sorolla, his use of white, he always said, I never use white. I always put a hint of warm or a hint of cool in my whites, and that's what gives it life. Well, that happens in this painting. You look at the background wallpaper, it's repeating that curvilinear movement, but in a more simple way in the shadow to set off the lights. The use of the Coca-Cola transparent glass and the foliage that's in the glass, marvelous. And you get down below into this lace, and it is just an exceptional piece. So congratulations, good job. This is the Philadelphia Watercolor Society's Board of Directors Award for a painting titled Reflections. And again, this is a piece done in acrylic in water media, and I love that exploration, as I mentioned earlier. One thing that's a little different with this piece than anything that we've seen so far is that it's on a square. It's a 22 by 22 inch piece. And I like a square. A lot of people say that's kind of a boring shape, but I think it can be broken up in a beautiful composition, and it gives you choices you couldn't get any other way. There's active and passive areas in the painting. Again, the right side with that dark amorphous color tone serves as a nice balance and negative to the opposite side, and the activity of the linear marks as well as the subtle painting shifts in color to the left side. If you study closely, there's hints of red violet, blue greens to yellow greens, but also with a lot of white, so you're keeping the value almost the same. And when you do that, you're not getting strong contrastic jerks of color change. You're getting a very sensitive, subtle visual quality. And I think that's really exciting. The notes of the yellow-orange serve as a nice warm balance to the predominantly cool composition. Good job. This is the National Watercolor Society Award for Excellence in Water Media, and it's given to a painting called Lime in the Coconut. And what a beautiful painting this is. I got to reminisce and think many years ago I had a painting in the National Watercolor Society show that got the Philadelphia Watercolor Society Award. So this is just a reciprocal thing, and thank you for that. This painting is transparent watercolor, but what a beautiful, beautiful feeling for light in this painting. It just shimmers, you can just feel it. The white paper, the lacing of the shadows, the hints of cool against the yellow greens and yellows, that's what gives it the light. Your eye seeks a balance through the opposite. So this is a predominantly warm painting, yellow greens to yellows all the way through. But when you lace that blue violet and deep blues and red violets in the composition in a subordinate way, it's going to bring that color to life. And that's what happens in this painting. This is a painting about light. Even though it's a representational painting, it's very abstractly designed and a beautiful, beautiful piece. So congratulations. The next award is from the Philadelphia Watercolor Society Founders Award, and it goes to a painting titled Marty. And I just kept coming back to this piece and moving it up the line because it had such feeling. I think the personality of the person here in the painting, I want to know. There's just a nice, positive feeling and relaxed, calm presence to this person. But the feeling for light moving from the right side of the painting into this, it feels like a morning light to me, is so beautifully done. And the neutrals setting off the light is so important to the painting. If you look in the background of the kitchen, you know, the neutral of the wall and the glass and so on sets off that warm light on the head of the figure. All the way through, it just has a nice feeling for light and shadow, and a wonderful placement in the composition. This bowl in the foreground is very important to counterbalance the composition. And if you look off to the right, the door in the next room is done in a very analogous high-key way, so it becomes a very secondary part of the composition. So beautifully done, nice, expressive, sensitive piece. Congratulations. The Elizabeth Schober Hooper Memorial Award for Presentation and Technique Excellence goes to this painting titled Main Street. And I've got to tell you, I keep coming back to this painting because it intrigues me so much. There's a mystery about it, and I keep going further and further into it, looking for these beautiful shapes and patterns and so on. And to tell you the truth, I'm still not sure what the story is. But I feel that maybe these figures are looking through a window at the interior, and you're getting these reflections kind of bouncing off the glass and so on. But I could be wrong about that. The main thing is it's such a sensitive and beautiful use of watercolor and these white kind of horizontal patterns that run through the piece with a wonderful beat. And then you have these dark, mysterious figures, and the placement is just magnificent. So I had to give it one of the top awards, even though I'm not still sure what the story is. It's just a beautiful handling of paint, and I'd love to know more about it. Congratulations. Okay, the top award for excellence, given by the Philadelphia Watercolor Society for works on paper, the Award of Excellence, goes to the painting called Moonlight in Porto. And I gotta say, I just kept coming back to this painting, and I responded to it so much. It's such a beautiful, beautiful piece. The use of yellow and violet moving all the way through it. The amorphous clouds, there's a little bit of gouache that was kind of splashed into that cloud. You can see it kind of breaking through. And then the neutrals in the cloud, and then that feeling for light that sets off all the buildings. And the port is just spectacular. This is painting about pattern again. And you see all the pattern, larger, smaller, lighter, cooler, and so on, that just dances through the painting. And you could just look at this painting for a long, long time. If you notice, some of the geometry of the buildings is very simple. There's just some simple shapes, and then they set off some larger, intricate shapes. And if all the buildings were painted the same emphasis, it wouldn't work. By having that loose, lost and found to that strong, sharp edge, and then those boats in the foreground, it's a wonderful sense of design and pattern. Moving again to those little vertical reflections that move down below, it's a magnificent piece, and I'd love to see it in person. By the way, someday I hope to get back to Philadelphia and see that Museum Row, and to see the Brandywine and Barnes collection and the Philadelphia Museum of Art and Pennsylvania Academy and all of that. Take a couple days and kind of roam through the city. So I look forward to doing that at a certain point. I know we're going to be doing a Zoom teaching workshop coming right up. I'm looking forward to that as well. We'll see how that goes. And I want to acknowledge my daughter Allison, who is the reason I can do this. She is a filmmaker. She will edit and put all this together, and she's helped me on so many projects. I think it's the only reason I could be doing, because I'm not a technical person in terms of the digital age, but I appreciate working with her so much. Thank you.